The moment my parents stood up at Easter dinner and told everyone I wasn't their real daughter, I realized the envelope in my bag was about to change everything. My name is Lily Anderson. I'm 25 years old, and for most of my life, I believed my family was simply difficult. Not cruel, not heartless, just complicated. At least, that's what I told myself. Growing up, my parents were never the warm, affectionate type. My father believed emotions made people weak, and my mother believed appearances were everything. In our house, reputation mattered more than feelings. From the outside, we looked like a perfectly normal middle-class family. We had a nice suburban home, a tidy front lawn, and we attended every holiday gathering with polite smiles. But inside the house, things were always tense. My older brother, Daniel, was the pride of the family. He was confident, charming, and always seemed to know exactly how to win my parents' approval. I was the opposite, quiet, observant, and often inconvenient. I learned early in life that asking too many questions made my father irritated. "Stop overthinking everything," he would say. And my mother had her own favorite phrase, "Lily, you make things more dramatic than they need to be." So I stopped talking about my feelings. Instead, I focused on school. Books were easier than people. By the time I graduated college with a degree in communications, I had already moved out of my parents' house. Not because they forced me to, but because the distance made life easier for everyone. I found a small apartment in the city and started working for a marketing agency. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. For the first time in my life, I felt like I could breathe. Still, holidays were non-negotiable in my family. My mother treated them like public performances. Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, every gathering had to look perfect. Perfect food, perfect table decorations, perfect family. And Easter dinner that year was no exception. My mother had been planning it for weeks. "Your aunt and uncle are coming," she told me over the phone a few days before. "And Daniel is bringing his girlfriend. So please try to look presentable." I laughed quietly. "I always look presentable." "Yes," she said. "But this time try to look successful." That sentence stuck with me. Successful. My mother had a very specific definition of that word. Expensive clothes, a high-paying job, a life impressive enough to talk about at dinner parties. My quiet marketing job didn't exactly excite her, but I still showed up because no matter how complicated my relationship with my parents was, part of me still hoped things could get better. That Easter afternoon, the house looked exactly like it always did during holidays. Bright decorations, a perfectly arranged dining table, and the smell of roasted ham drifting through the kitchen. Relatives filled the living room, chatting and laughing. My aunt hugged me when I arrived. "Lily," she said warmly, "you look wonderful." "Thank you," I smiled. My uncle nodded politely. Daniel was sitting on the couch beside his girlfriend, Emily. They both looked relaxed and happy. Daniel gave me a quick wave. "Hey, sis." For a moment, everything felt normal, but I noticed something strange almost immediately. My parents were watching me, not casually, carefully, like they were waiting for something. During dinner, my mother kept glancing at my father across the table. Small signals, teeny nods. Something silent was passing between them, and it made the back of my neck feel cold. Finally, halfway through dinner, my father stood up. He tapped his glass with a fork. The room fell quiet. Everyone looked at him. My father wasn't the type of person who made speeches during dinner, so the sudden attention felt strange. He cleared his throat. "There's something important we want to address tonight," he said. My stomach tightened. My mother stood up beside him. She placed a hand on his arm dramatically, like they were about to announce something emotional. Then my father looked directly at me. "Lily," he said slowly, "the family deserves to know the truth." "The truth?" Confused whispers spread around the table. My aunt frowned slightly. "What truth?" she asked. My father took a deep breath. Then he said the words that made the entire room freeze. "Lily is not our real daughter." The silence that followed felt endless. My fork slipped from my hand and hit the plate with a loud metallic sound. Around the table, shocked faces turned toward me. My aunt looked horrified. Daniel stared at our parents like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. My mother sighed heavily, as if she had been carrying this burden for years. "We didn't want to reveal this like this," she said sadly. But that wasn't the part that shocked me the most. The most shocking part was that they looked completely serious. Like they believed this story. Or worse, like they wanted everyone else to believe it. I slowly placed my hands on the table. My heart was beating fast, but strangely, I wasn't panicking. Because inside my bag, sitting quietly beneath the table, was the envelope. And suddenly, I realized something. If my parents wanted to reveal secrets tonight, then maybe it was time I did the same. For a few seconds after my father's words, the entire dining room felt frozen. No one moved, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint ticking of the kitchen clock on the wall. My aunt was the first person to react. "What do you mean she's not your real daughter?" she asked slowly, her voice filled with confusion. My mother sighed deeply, like she had been waiting years to share this tragic secret. "It's a long story," she said softly. My uncle leaned forward in his chair. "Well, we're clearly in the middle of it now." Across the table, my brother Daniel looked completely stunned. "Wait," he said, shaking his head. "Are you serious?" My father nodded gravely. "We adopted Lily shortly after she was born." The room erupted in quiet murmurs. I watched everyone's reactions carefully. My aunt looked shocked. My uncle looked skeptical. Daniel looked like someone had just pulled the ground out from under his feet. And my parents? They looked strangely calm. Too calm, like they had rehearsed this moment. My mother clasped her hands together and looked at me with a sad expression. "We always planned to tell you eventually," she said. Eventually, that word almost made me laugh. I had spent 25 years in this family, and suddenly, at Easter dinner, in front of relatives and strangers, they had decided this was the perfect time. My aunt shook her head slowly. "Why would you announce something like this now?" My father straightened his posture. "Because secrets destroy families," he said firmly. The irony of that sentence almost made my head spin. Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Hold on," he said. "Are you saying Lily has no idea who her real parents are?" My mother gave a dramatic nod. "We raised her as our own," she said. "But she was never biologically ours." All eyes turned to me again. Everyone was waiting for my reaction. A shock, anger, tears, something dramatic. But instead, I simply picked up my glass of water and took a slow sip. That seemed to confuse them. My father frowned slightly. "Lily," he said, "don't you have something to say?" I placed the glass back on the table carefully. "About what?" My aunt blinked. "Sweetheart," she said gently. "Did you know about this?" I looked at her. "No," I answered honestly. That part was true, but what happened next was not what my parents expected. Because instead of panicking, I started thinking, why now? Why tonight? Why in front of everyone? My mind quickly replayed the last few weeks. The strange phone calls, my parents asking unusually personal questions about my life, my mother suddenly becoming very curious about my finances. Then something clicked in my brain. They weren't telling this story to reveal the truth. They were telling it to change the story. And suddenly, the envelope in my bag felt heavier than ever. Across the table, my mother watched me carefully. "Lily," she said softly, "I know this must be difficult." Her tone sounded sympathetic, but her eyes were studying me like a scientist watching an experiment. I leaned back in my chair. "How long have you been planning this?" The question caught everyone off guard. My father frowned. "What do you mean?" "This speech," I said calmly. "You think this is a speech?" he asked. "It sounds rehearsed." Daniel slowly looked between me and our parents. "Okay, something feels weird here," he muttered. My mother shook her head quickly. "This isn't about drama," she said. "Then why announce it in front of everyone?" I asked. She hesitated, just for a moment. That moment was enough. My uncle crossed his arms. "She has a point," he said. My father's jaw tightened. "This is family," he replied. "They deserve honesty." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Yeah, but maybe not during Easter dinner." I noticed something interesting then. For the first time since the announcement, my parents looked slightly uncomfortable because the situation wasn't unfolding the way they expected. My mother tried to regain control of the moment. "We didn't want Lily finding out from someone else," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "From who?" Another pause. Another uncomfortable silence. Then my father said something that made the room even quieter. "From the legal documents." Daniel blinked. "Legal documents?" My heart skipped slightly. Now we were getting closer to the real reason. My father continued, "There are some family matters that require clarity." Clarity. That word again? My aunt looks suspicious now. What kind of matters? My father didn't answer her directly. Instead, he looked at me again. "If Lily isn't legally our daughter," he said slowly, "certain responsibilities change." Responsibilities. There it was, the real reason. This entire performance wasn't about the truth. It was about removing something, or someone. Daniel leaned forward suddenly. "Wait," he said. "Are you talking about inheritance?" The room went silent again. My mother looked down at the table. My father didn't answer, but he didn't deny it either. And in that moment, the entire story became crystal clear. They weren't just revealing a secret. They were rewriting my place in the family. Publicly. Legally. Completely. I slowly reached down beside my chair, into my bag, and wrapped my fingers around the envelope. Because if my parents wanted to talk about documents tonight, then they had no idea what kind of documents I had brought with me. The room was so quiet that I could hear the soft rustle of the curtains by the window. Everyone at the table was staring at my parents now, not at me. Daniel leaned forward slowly, his eyes narrowing. "Are you seriously trying to remove Lily from the inheritance?" he asked. My father didn't answer immediately. Instead, he adjusted the sleeve of his shirt like he was considering the perfect way to explain something simple. "It's not about removing anyone," he said finally. "It's about correcting a legal misunderstanding." A legal misunderstanding. My aunt looked horrified. "You raised her for 25 years, she said. "What misunderstanding could possibly exist?" My mother looked uncomfortable, but she still tried to maintain her calm expression. "Things were complicated back then," she said softly. My uncle frowned. "Complicated how?" My father sighed like this conversation was exhausting him. "When we adopted Lily, the paperwork wasn't finalized properly. I felt the envelope in my hand press against my fingers. Paperwork. Interesting choice of words." Daniel shook his head. "That doesn't make sense," he said. "If she lived here her whole life, she's still family." My father looked at him sternly, emotionally. "Yes." Then he added something colder. "Legally? Not necessarily." The words landed heavily on the table. For the first time since the announcement, I felt anger rising inside my chest. Not loud anger, not explosive anger, the quiet kind. The kind that builds slowly. My aunt looked at me with sympathy. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered. I gave her a small smile. "It's okay," I said. But my parents weren't looking at my aunt. They were looking at me, waiting. My father leaned forward slightly. "You've been unusually calm through all this," he said. I shrugged. Should I be screaming? My mother looked uncomfortable. "No, but we expected you to have questions." "I do." "What are they?" I tapped the edge of the table lightly. "Why now?" My father blinked. "What do you mean?" "You've had 25 years to explain this," I said. "Why choose Easter dinner?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's actually a good question." My father's expression tightened slightly. "There are legal matters happening soon," he said. "What kind of matters?" My mother answered this time. "Your grandmother's estate." The room shifted instantly. My aunt sat up straight. "Mom's estate?" My father nodded. "The will is being finalized next month." Daniel frowned. "So?" My father glanced at me again. "So it's important that everything is accurate." Accurate. That word told me everything. My grandmother had always treated me like a real granddaughter. Actually, she treated me better than most people in this house ever had. If her will included me, my parents would suddenly have a problem. Daniel seemed to realize the same thing. "Wait," he said slowly. "Are you saying you're trying to prove Lily isn't legally family before the will is finalized?" My father didn't respond, but his silence said enough. My aunt gasped softly. "You can't be serious." My uncle shook his head. "That's cold, even for you." My mother looked defensive now. "We're not doing anything wrong." Daniel stared at her. "You're announcing at Easter dinner that Lily isn't your daughter so she won't receive anything from Grandma?" "That's not what we said." "It's exactly what you said." I watched the entire conversation unfold like a spectator at a strange play. For years, I had believed my parents were simply strict, maybe a little distant. But this was different. This was strategy. My father cleared his throat. "We're simply clarifying facts." My aunt slammed her hand lightly on the table. "You're humiliating your daughter." My father corrected her immediately. "She is not our daughter. The sentence echoed through the room, and that was the moment I decided the conversation had gone far enough. I slowly pulled the envelope out of my bag and placed it gently on the table. The small movement instantly caught everyone's attention. Daniel looked down at it. "What's that?" My mother's eyes narrowed slightly. "Lily?" My father looked curious, but also cautious. "What are you doing?" I rested my hands on the envelope. "Earlier tonight," I said calmly, "Dad mentioned legal documents." No one interrupted me, so I thought it might be a good time to talk about documents. Daniel leaned closer to the table. "You brought paperwork to Easter dinner?" I nodded slightly. I wasn't planning to use it tonight. My father's expression changed. Slowly, carefully. "What kind of paperwork?" I looked directly at him. "The kind that answers a lot of questions." My mother suddenly looked nervous. "What questions?" I tapped the envelope gently. "Questions about my adoption." The entire table went still. My father's eyes locked onto the envelope. For the first time that evening, he didn't look confident anymore. He looked worried. Daniel noticed it too. "Wait," he said slowly. "You knew about the adoption." I shook my head. "Not exactly." "Then what's in the envelope?" I let a few seconds of silence pass, just long enough for everyone to feel the tension. Then I said the one sentence that changed the entire atmosphere in the room. "It contains the actual adoption records." My father's face went pale, and suddenly, the person most nervous about the truth wasn't me anymore. Part 4/5. The moment I said the words, "actual adoption records," the energy in the room changed completely. Just seconds ago, my parents had been confident, almost proud of the story they were telling. Now my father looked like someone had just pulled the rug out from under him. My mother's eyes were locked on the envelope like it might explode. Daniel leaned forward slowly. "Wait," he said. "You have the adoption records?" I nodded calmly. "Yes." My aunt looked between me and my parents. "Why would Lily have those?" she asked. That question hung in the air. My father tried to recover first. "That's impossible," he said quickly. "Those documents are private." I tilted my head slightly. "They are." I agreed. My uncle frowned. "So how did you get them?" I gently slid the envelope across the table with one finger. "Grandma." The word landed like a small earthquake in the room. Daniel blinked. "Grandma gave you the adoption records?" "Yes." My mother suddenly stood up from her chair. "That doesn't make sense," she said sharply. "She didn't even know where those documents were." I raised an eyebrow. "She knew exactly where they were." My father's face had lost its color. "You're lying," he said. I opened the envelope slowly. The sound of paper sliding against paper echoed across the silent dining room. "I visited Grandma 2 weeks ago," I said. Daniel looked confused. "You never mentioned that." "I wasn't planning to," I admitted. My aunt leaned forward. "Why did you visit her?" I placed the documents gently on the table. "Because she asked me to." That answer confused everyone. Even my uncle looked surprised. "Your grandmother called you?" "Yes." My mother's voice sounded strained. "And what exactly did she say?" I met her eyes calmly. "She said there were some things about our family that I deserved to know." No one spoke. My father's hands were gripping the edge of the table now. "Lily," he said carefully, "this isn't necessary." "Actually," I replied quietly, "I think it is." Daniel looked back and forth between us like he was watching a tennis match. "Okay. Someone needs to explain what's going on." I looked down at the documents. "These are the official adoption records from the county court," I said. My uncle squinted slightly. "So what do they say?" My father stood up suddenly. "That's enough," he said firmly. But this time, his voice didn't carry the same authority. My aunt crossed her arms. "No," she said. "It's not enough." She pointed at the papers. "If you're going to announce something like that at Easter dinner, we deserve to hear the whole story." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I'd like to know what's going on too." My father looked around the table, realizing something important. For the first time tonight, no one was on his side. My mother looked at him nervously. "Maybe we should talk about this later," she whispered. But the moment had already passed. The room was waiting, and everyone's eyes were on me. I picked up the first page slowly. "These records confirm that I was legally adopted," I said. Daniel frowned. "Isn't that what Mom and Dad just said?" "Yes," I replied. "But the rest of the document says something very different." My father's voice suddenly sounded sharp. "Lily!" I looked up at him. "Yes?" "Stop." I held his gaze for a moment. Then I calmly turned the page. "The adoption wasn't incomplete," I continued. "It was finalized." My aunt looked confused. "So, she is legally your daughter?" I nodded. Completely. My father shook his head. That's not correct. I lifted another document. This is the court certification with the judge's signature. Daniel leaned closer. Let me see that. He grabbed the page and scanned it quickly. After a few seconds, his eyebrows shot up. Well, he said slowly, that's pretty official. My uncle leaned over his shoulder. Looks legitimate to me. My mother's face had turned pale.